Canada delivered a historic geopolitical defeat to Washington just as Prime Minister Mark Carney rejected pressure from the Trump administration regarding the country's technological sovereignty and strategic infrastructure, refusing any kind of submission amidst the most explosive moment of market transition. This Saturday, June 8, 2026, Ottawa asserted its absolute firmness by making it clear that dependence on American data processing infrastructure would not be used as an instrument of political blackmail by Washington, while bilateral teams discussed new directions for investments in artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. Carney did not treat this as a common state agenda. He used the power of national planning, isolated the pressure from the White House, and sent a powerful political message in just 72 hours of intense sectoral deliberations. If the Trump administration was so sure it could dictate the rules of the digital market, why did it retreat in absolute silence in the face of the technical terms presented? If Carney wasn't preparing a serious response to protect the country, why did he use Canada's own research base and energy infrastructure to corner Washington's demands? And how did the American government intend to renegotiate the terms of data sovereignty when Canada's own corporate ecosystem was already acting independently and strategically? I'll tell you all about it, but now you'll want to subscribe to the channel to stay well informed with real-time information, the best journalistic quality ever seen, and the credibility standard of Wilson Alves. Prime Minister Mark Carney not only changed the country's traditional diplomatic posture, he abandoned protocol notes and directly confronted the skepticism from international analysts about Canada's real ability to maintain control of its digital sovereignty against American giants. Reports indicated that Washington attempted to link the supply of supercomputing from large U.S. cloud providers to broader commercial concessions within the economic bloc, demanding strict political alignment under the claim that Canada did not possess sufficient processing scale to compete in isolation on the global stage. In practice, the political image built by Ottawa is extremely strong. While Washington attempted to create a political event and impose market barriers to pressure its neighbor, Carney retreated with the sovereign infrastructure strategic plan in hand and made it clear that the protection of Canadian citizens' data would be at the top of the presidential agenda, with no room for unilateral concessions. The impasse directly impacted the deep technology and high-performance data processing sector, precisely the most sensitive and dynamic area of the new American economy, responsible for dictating which nations will control national security and industrial intelligence tools in the coming years. In simple terms, Canada closed the door to any attempt at blackmail where Washington most expected to find total economic and technical vulnerability. It was not a common decision in the diplomatic routine between the two countries. It was a decision of firmness, of defense of technological assets, and of a perfect strategic calculation based on local capabilities. This move came shortly after questions arose about the real leverage Canada would have if the U.S. government decided to violate or impose restrictions on the neighboring country's digital sovereignty, using the monopoly of large U.S.-based technology companies. The Canadian government pressed to maintain the terms of mutual cooperation without relinquishing the autonomy of its essential institutions. Under its current strategic plan, Canada recognizes that a significant portion of its raw data processing will still utilize large-scale, U.S.-based providers in the foreseeable future, but it is counterattacking by developing domestic model training and independent processing capabilities. When a nation stands up to defend the integrity of its information systems and the secrecy of its financial institutions, it is telling the world that it will not accept coercive renegotiations imposed by the size of a neighboring market. This is where the matter matters. If the Trump administration had a real technical or legal justification for imposing sanctions, it would not have backed down in the face of Ottawa's counter-arguments. Canadian leadership has entered a state of full readiness in recent weeks. Behind-the-scenes information indicated that Carney guided American negotiators through Canada's real competitive advantages line by line, highlighting that the country possesses assets that the United States cannot simply ignore or immediately replicate, ranging from clean energy infrastructure essential for data centers to the high concentration of brain power and technical intelligence residing on Canadian soil. The same source indicated that the Canadian government directly engaged corporate channels and leading research institutes, a move seen behind the scenes in Washington as a true operational checkmate at the negotiating table. Canada won the initial battle because it realized that American pressure depended on the technical isolation of the Canadian market, a scenario that does not reflect reality. The beginning of discussions on advanced artificial intelligence models and cybersecurity systems, such as the latest developments from Anthropic and OpenAI, created a window of risk for the data security of large global entities and financial institutions operating in an integrated manner on both sides of the border. Carney clearly outlined the magnitude of the shared damage that would occur if the flow of information and mutual protection in real time were interrupted by petty political disputes. Technology and cybersecurity sectors in Washington were placed on high alert. Defense officials adjusted their positions, and American industry leaders began to increase domestic pressure against any type of trade or regulatory blockade that could hinder the joint development of digital protection solutions. The business ecosystem focused on enterprise solutions and lighter, more efficient language models, such as those advocated by leading companies in Canada, served as an unquestionable technical argument to show that the country does not necessarily need the brutal scale of the United States to lead in practical and secure applications. This internal pressure within the United States' own economic environment reinforces the central thesis defended by Ottawa. Washington did not silence its aggressive rhetoric out of mere diplomatic courtesy. It silenced it because it understood that it was being pushed against the interests of its own technology corporations, which depend on partnering with the Canadian ecosystem to maintain secure global systems. Within the industrial and research fields of the American Midwest and coast, there was a growing understanding that any disruption or isolation of Canada would result in an immediate loss of competitiveness and cybersecurity for U.S. companies themselves. For the White House's true economic allies, the high-tech market demands clear rules, predictability, and strong partnerships. This is why the Canadian Prime Minister's firmness carried so much political weight in this round of negotiations. He did not seek a fragile gentleman's agreement or a perfunctory diplomatic exit that could be undone with the next social media post. He ensured that national strategic planning remains focused on attracting global talent and strengthening local scientific institutions. On the American side, the calculation of political pressure proved to be a dangerous strategic error that ended up exposing the government's own vulnerabilities in the face of the scientific and business community. Washington's pressure strategy revealed profound institutional weakness. A government with solid and sustainable arguments maintains market competition in an open and regulated manner. A government cornered by technical reality and mutual security dependence retreats from its threats without giving significant public explanations, without issuing victorious statements, and tries to make the focus of the crisis disappear to save face before international public opinion. Meanwhile, investigations point to an intense behind-the-scenes war involving the attraction of brilliant minds from the technology market to Canadian soil. More than 100 of the world's best researchers have migrated to centers of excellence in Canada in the last 18 months, consolidating the country as an irresistible innovation hub that simply cannot be isolated by political decrees. The problem for the American strategy is that the scientific community and technology companies do not respond to empty nationalist appeals. They rigorously follow the mathematics of investment, freedom of research, and legal security. And Canada offers a multi-billion-dollar financial support structure to ensure that these leading professionals have the necessary resources to develop their research without external interference or abusive governmental pressure. When the initial geopolitical dispute ended at the turn of the 72 hours, the impact was not restricted to the offices in Ottawa or Washington. It spread as a clear signal to partners in Mexico, the European Union, and the Indo-Pacific that autonomy and contracts signed with Canada must be fully respected under the terms of the law. Carney knows perfectly well that this victory in the field of digital sovereignty and talent attraction will serve as a powerful political lever for the upcoming renegotiations of the USMCA trade agreement and for the definition of tariff policies for traditional sectors. By holding firm without yielding an inch on structural demands, the Canadian government sent a direct message to its commercial allies and adversaries across the globe. The absolute priority now is the stability of the rules of the game and long-term economic predictability. The decision has strong symbolic significance because it directly involves the survival and credibility of international partnerships as functional instruments for the development of global free trade. A government that abandons inflammatory populist rhetoric and wins the debate through the pure application of long-term strategic planning shows that real geopolitics demands much more than commercial threats on political platforms. Washington attempted to respond with silence and the postponement of thorny issues, but Canadian preparations and investments are advancing at an accelerated pace on several integrated fronts. With billions of dollars in financing plans secured and robust international partnerships progressing, the government confirms that the country's sovereign development timeline is being maintained and operating at maximum capacity. Canada's strategic victory in this round is undeniable, but this dynamic of constant political pressure in North America has clear and dangerous limits. The more Ottawa consolidates the success of its autonomy and investment attraction policies, the more the American government represses its next steps behind the scenes in Capitol Hill. Diplomatic sources indicate that Washington may try to regroup its forces through other traditional tools of friction, such as imposing stricter bureaucratic barriers and commodity oversight and adjusting quotas and tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from countries operating outside of American priorities. The scenario of regulatory disputes and tariff revisions in the digital content services and distribution sector is also strongly on the radar as a front where Washington will try to recover lost political ground. While Canadian regulatory agencies seek to balance internal costs for the population and protect local cultural industries without stifling consumers during times of inflationary pressure on supermarket shelves, American authorities continue to treat any tariff change as a direct commercial affront to their corporate interests. This dramatically increases the weight of each new decision made in Ottawa, proving that Prime Minister Mark Carney is not merely dealing with an academic discussion about technology or isolated customs rules. He is managing a complex web that interconnects the cybersecurity of banking systems, the daily cost of living for the population, the industrial supply chain, and the future of national sovereignty within the same high-intensity geopolitical chessboard. The most delicate point now is the timing and strict adherence to the targets set in the state budget, and the clock is ticking rapidly against anyone who wants to impose a new economic or political blockade before the practical results solidify before society. In international crises of this magnitude, every hour of successfully executed planning and every new international alliance forged demonstrates that Canada will not accept being caught off guard on any new front in this long struggle for control of the America's future. The world fully understands that the next big news regarding the balance of global economic power could emerge at any moment from the control rooms of Ottawa or the political radars of Washington. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your comment at the end. Thank you, and until next time.